All right. Welcome in, Metafam. Everyone joining in. We're supposed to be having a Twitter space here. 3 o'clock, should be here in the next minute or so, where Syntax is possibly going to have John Brda and Rosa Tawil on the Twitter space. So we're going to be here to live stream it. I'm going to stay in a little bit, but I'm going to let the live stream roll. I'll just take off my video, and that way you can focus on what John Brda and Rosa Tawil is saying. But I do want to stay here initially. And I will be like commenting in like the actual chat. But it just won't be a part of the actual like video. Hey Sandra, Tyrone, Hal, what's going on, guys? Welcome in. Like I said, just counting down here for when the Metafam chat starts here on Twitter. Nice to see the moderators. William in there, Tim. I'm going to keep refreshing here because let me go back here because I had this actually saved. As you all know, hey Thomas, what's going on? Natalie. All right, here we go. This was Syntax post. Well, basically I'll know when this is live because she'll have like the microphone around her icon. So here we go. Yeah, don't forget 3 p.m. Eastern time today. Should have John Brda, Trading Secrets, Rosa Tawil. She might be able to stop by. So we will see what happens there. And I figured, all right, Hal said it's live. Okay, let me go back to home. And let me go here to Syntax. There we go. Why ain't it letting me do it? Why ain't it letting me? Twitter space. All right, why isn't this coming up as a thing here to play on the computer? Why is the computer being stupid? Let me do it on my phone. Might be able to send it off my phone. There we go. Yeah, it's on there. All right, so let's do this. I don't know why it's not showing up on the computer. Maybe notifications. No. Sorry, guys. Trying to get this here, but sometimes it's... let's see. Can someone send me the link to this? Because the desktop is not working like the phone, and I don't understand why. I don't understand why it's not. Okay, yeah, here's that. Okay, like, why doesn't it let me, like, click into it? It just says set reminder and share. What the heck's going on here? Let's see. All right. Yeah, it has this here. But why isn't it let me click into it on there? It doesn't say like join. Hey, what's going on, Kevin? Welcome in. I'm not sure what is going on here with my desktop not letting me go into the Twitter space. That is so weird. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I click on her profile, but it doesn't say like join. That is so strange. All right, let me do another Twitter. What the heck's going on here? There we go.
Sorry, that was my husband. So I did ask the question that you were wondering. I asked them about who they used to clear, and they're self-clearing, but then they also said that they use the NCSS, which I think is who the lawyer that was talking from the SEC, she was saying those are the people that she cannot stand. And then they use CNS. What rabbit holes are you going down? You're doing a lot of research.
Well, all of those things that you just mentioned are all potential places where, fake shares go to hide. And so NSCC is, they were bought by DTCC, and that's where, stock lending pool is done out of there. CNS is continuous net settlement, and that's a problem. So there's, DTCC, what they sent back to AST is just the beginning. It's just a line in the sand on a certain day that's what DTCC has on their books. And now it's up to each broker to settle their own books.
Okay, so this guy that I was talking to, and obviously he couldn't speak to all the brokers, but he seemed very convinced. We have a phone meeting on Tuesday, and he believes that Vanguard will be clean, all its books will be settled, that they will have all the shares. I was trying to ask him, how do they allocate what brokers get how many shares? Do you know that information?
I don't know exactly how it's done at the DTCC level, but I'm assuming it's based upon the reported long positions that they have that, they're responsible to report to DTCC. So if they're not doing it correctly, then that's on them. So,
But that would be assuming that nobody actually went in and registered their shares and filled up the 165 million at the.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. I'll tell you, and I'll explain how that actually happens. So, right now, when when AST issued the shares, they're 165.5 million. Everybody knows that. There was only 2.5 million at AST that were in individuals' names. Okay, the rest were in street name, which means that one account statement was sent to DTCC, and then they had to look on their books and decide what each individual clearing firm had due to them. And so they sent that information back to AST, and then AST turns around and sends a gross certificate, or basically a gross statement. For example, to E-Trade is 13 million shares, and TD Ameritrade is 53 million shares, and that's how they send it out. Now, if you're at TD Ameritrade and their books say there's 53 million shares long exactly, then you have no issues. But
okay, so it's just when you see it.
Sorry?
Oh, no, keep going.
Yeah,
sorry.
So basically it comes down to, now that we have a line in the sand, we have a baseline amount. Now we have to press the issue behind the scenes on, by the folks that we're hiring to do some investigations as to, is that number truly correct at TD? Is that number truly correct at E-Trade? Is that number truly correct at everybody who got shares from DTC? For example, Citadel got 2,900 shares. There's a silent pause.
No, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it, because it's like I'm learning by fire.
Yep.
I was not really savvy in this. I'm learning a lot very quickly, and it sometimes can be overwhelming a little bit. And so I'm trying to think, so then my brain starts thinking about, okay, well, what about when somebody shorted and they went through the merger, and how did that mess up their accounting? Because there's shares that aren't actually shares. So, the synthetics that we're talking about, I'm just.
Yeah, all of that needs to shake out. You can't keep this going in a private company. It's an impossibility. So, unfortunately, I think it's until the SEC and FINRA decide that they're going to come down on these folks, which is really only a function of us applying pressure, which everybody's doing a great job of. But we still need to keep the squeaky wheel going, because that's who's going to make this stop. And now the other side of that, from legal perspectives, we can do discovery and due diligence and get some information that there truly is an imbalance. But until you actually sue them in a court of law, then you won't know what that imbalance is, because they're not going to tell us. They're not going to open up and say, yeah, I'm 14 million shares on the wrong side of this, right? They won't do that. But I think, this is a multiple prong approach, and I think we're doing the best we can with the information that we have. So I applaud everybody for keeping the pressure on, from Congress to celebrities to talk shows to internet shows. All of that stuff is important because it just gets the word out. So the more, if this ever gets swept under the rug or people stop talking about it, then it'll be much harder for us to get what we want.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And that's why I'm like, I know they're telling us to wait, but we cannot wait silently, because this is the moment where we have to be loud.
Absolutely. 100%.
So you talk about these prongs, right? These different elements that we're really being proactive in. Is there anything that you're seeing that maybe is an avenue that we haven't explored, or we've underexplored it, where we could spend more energy?
Well, you've seen my tweets about who we're talking to. We're trying to get all of the agreements in place to hire the folks that can actually do the due diligence and has access to, for example, all of the trades from the last 5 years in Torchlight, Metamaterials, and Mmtlp, every single trade. To be able to go through that and then actually pair them off with the buyer and the seller, whether they were marked short or whether they were marked where it was a long sale, and whether or not the share was borrowed, and all of that becomes an accumulative project. And so thankfully there's a computer program that does all that, which I don't have, and but this group that we're hiring does all of that. So that should be started, I would hope, by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. And he's ready to move and can move very quickly on it. But there's a lot of information that needs to be gathered.
Yeah. Information is power. That gives us the ammo we need to go and actually fire, because everyone's like, well, we hear you screaming, but where's your raw data? And we're like, but they're hiding it.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's all on their side.
Yeah. Right? Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like I've been selfish. I've taken up your time, and I see we have a lot of hands, and I'm not going to try and stay on this call for too many hours, but I'm wondering if you would be willing to. Yeah, Oracle.
No, I was just going to say, Syntax, I'm trying to give a mic to Ali, Trading Secrets.
Yeah, I gave him it too. And does he need to drop out and come back in?
Yeah, I think so. Ali, if you can hear this, please drop out, come back in, because unfortunately it's giving us an error in giving you a mic.
Yeah, and props to Ali, because he's actually the one who coordinated this. So thank you for giving me a fire to have a fan chat, because I am always loving talking to you guys. While we wait for him, though, let's just, I believe Edward has his hand up first.
Yeah, Edward.
Hey guys, first and foremost, Happy New Year to everybody. And thank you, John, for taking the time to come on the space and simply just share information and answer questions. Truly appreciated, John. So a lot of great due diligence was done by people. The community is really great. A lot of brains put together. And I just wanted to kind of understand a process here with AST. We do know that the shares of Nextbridge are not DTC eligible, nor do they have a QSIP, right?
Correct.
AST did acknowledge over the phone, though, that there is a QSIP number that's associated to Nextbridge hydrocarbon under the QSIP number of 591994371. And I imagine that to be a placeholder until the shares are transferred, correct?
I would assume so, yeah.
Okay. So here's the interesting piece. that CUSIP number was active as of November 2nd, 2022. Now,
Wow.
all of these brokers knew that that was the CUSIP number associated to Nextbridge hydrocarbon shares as of that date. Yet, after the spin-off, what's happening right now is that all these brokers, or most of them, have a CUSIP number, have that correct CUSIP number associated, except for TD. TD, as of right after the spin-off, they never used that CUSIP. They used an internal CUSIP that's pretty much just not traceable at all. Why is that, first of all? And we also seen yesterday that Fidelity no longer used that CUSIP and changed to an internal CUSIP as well.
That's I don't understand the inner workings of that. And if DTC gave all the brokerage houses, like you said, on November 2nd, that temporary or whatever they call it, CUSIP for Nextbridge hydrocarbons, that's news to me. I did not know that they did that, and I'm not familiar with why they would or wouldn't do that. As far as each individual house putting a temporary internal code on that, they do that so they can actually hold restricted shares and private shares. So until they'll use that for their internal purposes, so that they can actually keep those shares on their books in safekeeping for the client.
Okay, but wouldn't they be able to do that also with that 371 CUSIP associated to Nextbridge hydrocarbons?
I don't know. I don't know what their internal processes are.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's a broker to broker, decision.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John.
Sure.
All right. Thanks, Edward. Appreciate it. Costas.
Hey, hang on. I just want to ask Edward a clarifying question on what he said. Do you have a hypothesis or a concern about the fact that they have a different CUSIP?
Well, not really. I mean, it's a CUSIP is just an identifier, and unless they start to trade on it, then I'll have a concern on it, right?
Okay.
And quite frankly, if they start to trade on it, maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that's what we were looking for, is a gray market, right? So that doesn't give me concern off as it stands right now.
But John, just to add on to that, if the CUSIP, we know that 371 is the one that's associated and recognized by AST. Does that give any information from broker to AST? Would they be able to trace the shares? Or by using an internal CUSIP, they wouldn't have that information? Is that a path that they could take, or not at all?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
All right, thanks.
Unfortunately, yep.
Yeah, and Edward kind of expanded to what I was getting at, because essentially, if you pre-registered prior to November or December, you were given a preferred share, sort of temporary AST. Then you moved over to this new one that we reference now. My only 2 cents to that is if I had pre-registered, you specify what broker you're from, that pre-registration would remove you or that quantity from the Fidelity allocation, essentially. So that's my 2 cents is, could we have the issue where we know counterfeit shares were sold? Could have Fidelity or any other broker oversold their allocation, which is why they're giving out a temporary CUSIP?
If they did, it wouldn't be on AST. AST is not our issue, guys, at all. AST is basically sitting on 165.5 million shares. If they send 13 million shares out to E-Trade, and E-Trade has an imbalance, and they've got 18 million longs and only 13 million shares, that's on E-Trade. It's not on AST. But
to that point, if I was an E-Trade employee or E-Trade register, would AST have known during the pre-registration process that there was 13 million in one that's over their allocation, or when would they know? No, they're not going to know. In fact, they still don't know whether or not E-Trade is over their allocation. I mean, until E-Trade responds back saying, "Hey, you're over." No, they won't even do that. They won't respond back. They'll just say they're going to keep all of those shares in E-Trade unless the shareholders request them to go back to AST. And then when they get to 13 million shares, AST is going to say, "Up, you're done.
you can't send any more back here. And so it's a function of, it's a way to keep each house from going over their allocation that DTCC gave them. You follow me what I'm saying?
Yep. Unless there's a corporate action that says, hey, we need to pay out something or buy back or whatever the issue is, because that goes back to that quarter penny sort of hypothesis of paying that out. There's no way brokerage will overpay that, because that's just adds to the long-term liability of, hey, I'm paying this fake share. What happens tomorrow when it gets sold, or is it dividend or anything else? So that half a penny sort of concept is a way to sort of maybe catch them.
Yeah, we talked. I actually talked to some folks about that, and the problem with the penny or a half penny or whatever, even any dollar amount, is that the guys who are nefarious in this will just put up the money. They'll just say, yeah, it's, you know what, I got to put up 50 grand, fine. Here's 50 grand to, 10,000 shareholders. And that won't force them to solve the problem.
But holding,
and so, because that's how they do it on a regular dividend. For example, if you do, taking the dividend in IBM, if they're short it, they can maintain their short and just pay the cash to the original owner of the share, right? So in this situation, if you do a half penny or a penny, whatever, they can do the same thing. They'll just, pay the share, pay the penny to whomever has a long position. Even if it's synthetic, they can still pay the penny.
but what about holding a vote?
Yeah, but
holding a vote is one way to get around that. But I'm actually exploring with AST. Will all of the shares will they only allow 165 million shares to vote, or will they allow whatever is a long position at the houses to vote? Because when you do, for example, when you send out a shareholder vote, it goes out electronically to the houses, and then they turn around and basically give you a message at your brokerage that says, hey, you need to vote your shares. Well, how do we know that broker is actually giving that right to vote to all of those people? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, thanks.
Because I don't want them. I don't want to do it.
The problem.
Yeah.
Giving the right to vote isn't the problem. The problem is when they get the right to vote back, are
right,
they actually reporting it back to AST?
That's right. So where is all that going? And I know that when they click on, for example, when you click on it to vote, most of the time, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but what my experience has been when I vote online is that it actually takes me to Broadridge or whoever is doing the vote tally, and there's a page there that you can electronically fill in and click to enter based upon your control number. And so it kind of goes away from the broker. But I don't want to, let's just say I'm investigating that, but I don't want to make any mistakes and do a shareholder vote and then come back and say, well, we screwed up, we didn't do it right. You know what I mean? Because here's the other side of that, it makes sense to do a shareholder vote, because if the problem is bigger than the amount of shares that Nextbridge has, or the fact that they're not going to be able to buy back enough shares on the market through gray sheets, they're going to need more shares. So all of that makes sense.
So my last little point is, should we direct register versus allowing the brokers to hold it in their street name? What's
Absolutely.
better?
Yeah, 100% you can. You can do that through the ACAT system. Even though it's not DRS eligible, you can call your broker and say, I want to ACAT the shares back to AST. And they should be doing that immediately. That's exactly what they need. And I've been telling people, this is your decision if you want to do that. If you feel like the gray market is not going to develop, then I would recommend doing that immediately. But if you feel like you want to wait a few days or a week to decide not to do that, if you don't think there's going to be a gray market, that's when I would do that. Because once you ACAT them back, ACATting them back into the brokerage to sell is going to be next to impossible.
Yeah, that's kind of where I felt like I was stuck. And it's hard too, because you're talking to your brokerage and it's kind of that mental game that they play. And not saying they do it intentionally, because I think they really have no idea how bad their situation is. Because the guy I was talking to from Vanguard, I mean, he is convinced. I bet him a root beer on Tuesday. We have our phone meeting, and I'm like, If your house is all clean and you got all the shares you need, great, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. And so I don't want to transfer anything if I could or do that, because the opportunity, if there is a gray market, I don't want to lose that, you know?
I agree.
It's hard. It's like, if I have an opportunity to make some money, great, because we're all in this for money too. But then there's the other part of me that's like, I want to make change, and I want this to be big enough that it creates some kind of a pain and is an educational opportunity, life lessons. I feel like we have some hedge funds that need some life lessons, and I want to give them life lessons.
100%. I agree with that.
Awesome. Kitty Cat, I'm sorry, I've been ranting and you've had your hand up for so long.
Actually, hold on for 1 second, guys. Please, because it's absolutely fantastic that we have John in here. Please keep your questions to 1 or 2. That's it, because there are a lot of people who would like to speak with John. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, I'm trying to give people mics. So people, once you finish, please drop your mic. If I drop your mic, please understand why. So thank you, everyone. Kitty, go on.
Hey, this is Kay. It's my first time calling in. I'm sounding like an old person, but so first of all, thanks to everyone that's been doing all these space calls, because I don't know what I'd be doing, like pulling my hair out if I was sitting here, by myself trying to figure this all out, and just the moral support and everything. And John, thanks for your time.
Sure.
Couple questions. So regarding the amount of naked shorts there might be out there, so I guess we still don't know, and I don't know if we're ever gonna fully know. But once your share intel people and whatever they do, when they have a good idea of what might be out there, is that information that you would be able to share with the community? I think it's like, just in case there is a gray market, that would give us some sort of like leverage as far as considering what pricing or whatever to sell for.
That I don't know if it's shareable in the public domain or not. I'd have to check and see. One thing I will be able to tell you is if there's an imbalance. So the first things that they do is actually check on DTCC ins and outs, so to speak, for the last 5 years, including on all 3 tickers. And one of the first things they do is that if there is an imbalance in DTCC, then the imbalance on broker to broker clearing is significantly higher. And so those people that have an imbalance on DTCC are the likely culprits on broker to broker clearing as well. And so that's, once you have that information, then you basically, start filing suit. So, and because you know who the culprits are.
Gotcha.
But when they come back with the first bit of information, it's not going to be all of it. It's going to be enough for us to file suit and get more discovery directly from them.
Okay, that makes sense. And then as far as so I'm not sure if you've been told for sure that like AST is full. Do we know if it is?
No, AST is not. This concept of full is a little I don't want to say misleading, because it is what it is, but they were issued 165.5 million shares for Nextbridge, correct? And so when they turned around and issued them to the shareholders, they issued 2.5 million to the people that had already registered their shares at AST, which means they weren't in a broker dealer anymore. They were at AST.
Right.
Then the rest, 163 million, were issued to DTCC. And because it's not DTC eligible, they actually sent the shares back to AST with a breakout of who gets the shares. And that breakout could be, I could tell you there's 40 or 50 broker dealers involved and clearinghouses involved. So that's how it's done. It's done with the clearinghouses because guys like Trading 212, which is a broker dealer, clears through Apex. So they send them out and they say, hey, AST, TD Ameritrade gets 53 million, E-Trade gets 13 million. And then AST notifies TD Ameritrade of how many they're getting. And then it's up to TD Ameritrade to balance their own books internally. So if TD Ameritrade is showing 75 million longs and they're only getting 53 million shares, well, then they have a problem.
And is that 53 million like an actual number that you know, or is that just kind of like an estimate or?
That's an actual number that I know.
Oh, okay. Cool. And then so then are they actually sending paper certificates back to the brokerages? Because,
No.
Fidelity yesterday, they're not.
They're not. No, it actually is a statement. So AST doesn't like to send out certificates anymore because people lose them.
Right.
And so they do it in basically in a statement, and they send a statement to E-Trade saying, your account here has 13 million shares of Nextbridge, and then it's up to the E-Trade shareholder, the person who owns Nextbridge at E-Trade to say, I want you to ACAT my 1,000 shares to AST so it's registered in my name and I get my own account statement.
Yeah, so yesterday what it sounded like was, Fidelity was claiming that they received via FedEx certificates or something like that. So in my mind, I was assuming that they're talking about paper, but, based on the S1 and everything too, it didn't sound like AST was issuing paper certificates. So it just kind of didn't make sense.
No, they really don't like to do it because it's just chaos, right? And
yeah, and it costs them money, I'm sure, just,
Yep.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you so much.
All right, Kitty. Thanks so much. Let's go on over to Theo and then Marcos. Go ahead, Theo.
Hey, John. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Sure.
First off. Second off, so we've seen a lot of stuff about brokerages saying there's a DTCC chill, the U3 halt is still in place. Doing some research into that, the DTCC chill isn't applicable unless it's posted publicly for investors. I got as far as getting TD to acknowledge that there was no chill in place, but they're still refusing to do things like direct registering. How do we get around that? How do we prove to them there's nothing for you to fall back on? You need to just do what we're saying.
I would say that you there's a couple different ways to do it. You can open a what's the word I'm looking for? Open a claim with DTCC that if you have TD Ameritrade, for example, that TD Ameritrade is not allowing you to direct register your shares via ACAT with AST, and DTCC will come down on them and make them do that.
And did you guys hear, I was blasting this everywhere yesterday, how you can go ahead and get your claim started, because you can call DTC and depending on who you talk to will depend whether or not they even escalate this for you. But we did find a back door. It was, let me check. I think the email address was csc.dtcc or csc@dtcc.com. And if you email them and you put that information in your email, then it should give you a case number right away. Because lots of times when you call the DTC, they won't talk to you unless you have a case number. It may work, it may not work anymore, but it was something we found yesterday and we swarmed it.
Hey, Sen, can you do me a favor? Can you put that up into the nest?
Yep, I'm on it.
I just did. I was already working on it. Yep, go ahead. I'll put both the email tweet in there as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Curtis. Appreciate it, buddy. Okay, Theo, are you? Thank you. Let's go on to Marcos.
Hey guys, I just wanted to quickly report that I just called Fidelity right now, and I specifically asked them to transfer to DRS a portion of my shares. First, the guy gave me the runaround and said, "Oh, we're not doing this right now." And then I told him, "Listen, I called you guys yesterday, and I was told that you guys received the shares, so I want to DRS a portion of my shares." He said, "Okay, let me look," and then it took a little bit, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's right. The situation is fluid, it's changing." I'm like, "Okay, well, go ahead and do that for me." And then he said, "Okay, let's do that." He, he gave me a brief disclaimer. I said, "Yes, let's do it." And then the funny thing is that he gave me a reference number for the transaction. And then I repeated back to him the same number he gave me, and I recorded the call. And then he gave me a different number for the second time. And I made a note of that. And then I said, "Okay, can you guys send me a confirmation? Will I get an email, a confirmation that I, confirming my DRS, he said, yes, you should see something on your activity and orders history. And I'm talking to Fidelity. And as I'm looking at this history right now, nothing is showing up. So my theory is that these guys are playing the long game right now with us. All right. I just wanted to point it out. And I don't think, and I asked him, how long is it going to take to transfer the shares? He said 3 to 5 days. I don't think he did anything on my case.
Yeah, I know that when I talked to AST about ACAT, they said it's probably a 3 to 5 day process, if not longer. ACAT is longer than DRS. I don't know if they're going to be able to do DRS. I don't know who's talking, but they may come back and say, we can't do that. We have to ACAT it. So you might want to follow up with your guy there and just so they don't make any excuses with you.
No, I'm saying like, because he said that it would show immediately in my account. It would reflect on the history that I requested the DRS.
Mm-hmm.
But so far I'm looking at it and it's been like 20 minutes that I requested and nothing shows up. And he also said that they would send me an email, confirm the transaction, but I didn't get anything. But the most suspicious thing was that he changed the reference number when I confirmed the number with him. So something tells me that they're not doing anything. They're just, pushing this thing forward.
Right.
And
anyway.
you didn't call it out on the different numbers?
What's that?
You didn't call him out for giving you different numbers?
No, I didn't call him out, but I got this number starting with an O. O as an Oscar. He told me O as an Oscar. And then I read it back to him and he said, no, it's T as in Thomas. I'm like, what? It's just,
hear me?
It's a mess.
Can anyone?
Amazon's here.
Anyway, thank you guys for the microphone. I just wanted to tell you guys that they're kind of going through the process, but I don't think they're doing anything.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, I don't even know if it's trust and verify at this point. I don't know if I have any trust left.
Okay, excellent. All right, let's go on over to Edward. Go ahead, Edward.
Hey, Oracle, I think I have CFS had her hand up before me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I have. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't know if anybody noticed this. I have TD Ameritrade. Quite a few days ago, I did a research on their CUSIP and nothing came up. I'm not the only one that noticed this morning. It now comes up. I've posted it and I just posted it again. When you go into TD Ameritrade to their CUSIP research, now our CUSIP number that they gave us is associated with what I believe to be maybe a Chinese company or whatever, and it clearly states it's in the gray market. How is that possible?
I don't know. I would be calling TD and speaking to a manager level person with that and asking them about that.
I'm going to. I've been busy all day long just doing research and listening to all of these, but I did post it twice and I just posted it now. And it was not there a few days ago. In other words, when we end in TD Ameritrade with a 019, when you did that research, nothing came up. Now all of a sudden this morning it does, to a totally different company.
And that's TD, right? I don't know if Curtis raised his hand in direct response to that. If it is in direct response to that, I would like to go out of order and see if he can answer that. Curtis?
I missed part of the context of the question, but I do have TD Ameritrade. Would you mind restating it?
For me?
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. The CUSIP that they gave us that ends in, what is it, the 019?
Yes.
Okay. A few days ago, when I did the research, nothing came up. As of this morning, when you do the research through their platform, whether on the computer, it now comes up associated with not one but two different companies, and one of those companies is on the gray market.
I did see that. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I understood what you were alluding to.
I just don't understand why.
Yeah, and those are I don't know anything about recycling CUSIPs. But it go ahead, Edward.
I could step in and talk about that. Actually, what TD is doing in the research function, it's just taking anything that's closely similar to it, but it's actually not MMTLP. It has nothing to do. If you were to try any different QSIP, you'll see it'll come back to these companies as well.
Yeah, it's coming back as like a partial character match. That's what I saw, is that it had no actual relation to Nextbridge hydrocarbons or prior MMTLP. It was just showing as one of the search results. Somebody shared that previously and was saying, oh, look, it's showing gray market on one of the two results, but it doesn't have any kind of association to do with this, at least not now.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Rosa, I'm trying to give you a mic.
Here. I don't really have too much of an update now. As we all know, nothing has really happened. I am kind of thinking about prospective next moves, but I don't know how much I want to speak on it yet, just because the sake of now that everybody's been served, and I'm sure attorneys are scouring the internet with my name. Don't know how much I want to actually reveal on my intentions. But I can answer some questions.
But we appreciate you.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that makes absolute sense. I think you're very wise, because we know that they're probably in this space as well. Because, hey, why not join? If they're going to be chatting, then maybe we can get some information. But we appreciate the fact that you're here and willing to take questions. I know that you're only here for a little bit of time because you're very busy today. And if there's any questions that somebody has and you cannot answer them or do not want to answer them, we are not offended. We appreciate everything that you're doing. And so we're just grateful that you took the time to be here with us right now.
I appreciate that. I mean, if anybody has questions that I can answer, I'm open and willing now. So I know that some of the things that I've seen are kind of, is it possible to open the 2 days of trading? Well, because they've already disposed of a lot of the MMTLP. But the thing is, I don't know of anybody that has verified AST Nextbridge hydrocarbon shares. So I know Nextbridge is using AST, which is the it's like a third party, kind of like almost a bookkeeping for corporations, right? And they're holding these private shares, which it seems to me are bearer shares, considering that all these different organizations have claimed that they received them in the mail. I like the term received in the mail a lot better than lost in the mail, but I don't think it much benefits us at this point in time. So based on that, the placeholders, so my biggest issue and why I have kind of pursued in this case is that we had MMTLP, which was an asset dividend that was to be paid out in the future, but it represented a share in a holding in assets. So you can say my MMTLP, I own this asset by way of this a ticker. These placeholders are not company shares and they're not assets. They are essentially nothing. So they're kind of taking away ownership of an asset and replacing it with ghost shares. So my intention in the lawsuit so far is provide an accounting or replace all the MMTLP and get rid of all the placeholders. And then once they replace all the MMTLP, well, now we're at a point where, okay, your accounting has discrepancies. So you need to reconcile those before deleting MMTLP and issuing Nextbridge. I don't know how successful it is considering that this judge has been got some lead in his shoes, but
I don't know, Rosa, there's the fact that you're doing everything that you can to try and get an accounting. It speaks volumes, because if we can get the information, that's our weapon.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing at this point is a lot of people have said, oh, well, what you're asking for doesn't make sense, or people have a lot of questions about what I'm asking for, or how the a lot of the questions about data and all these things. My biggest thing is, yes, I'm asking for data because there's discrepancies and people are questioning some of the sources that I've used, which is fine. Question as much as you want. It helps me do better, right? When we all question things, I can search for those answers and I can say, you know what, here's something better I can use. But my point being is that there is discrepancies across the board on every data forum. Every forum that has data has some kind of discrepancies. And now I'm saying, okay, well, everybody's saying something different, so put up the accounting. provide it. You know what? Prove that these assets are not being diluted. Prove that Nextbridge is not being diluted under your watch. It's your job to regulate. And if you're not regulating effectively, and instead, why are the shareholders the ones taking the hit? So that's kind of where I'm at with, yeah, I don't mind the discrepancies being all across the board, because that's kind of what says, okay, so put up an accounting.
Can I ask a question, and maybe both Rosa and John can chime in?
Well, hang on, D2B. Let me go in order real quick because we got some hands going up.
Sure.
Just because I love you, I want you to talk. But hang on, 1 second. Oracle, I didn't pay attention to who was who. Like for
No, it's Edward. Edward's next, and then Brandon.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, guys. I'll just mention a few things. First of all, we had one of the shareholders who did directly talk to TD Ameritrade, just to put this in the clear, and he specifically asked about the QSIP of 5TC or 5CT. I can't remember it. And the first thing that pulls up for TD Ameritrade, that there is directly a relationship with the 371 QSIP. So just to put everyone's minds at ease regarding that. Now, second thing that I wanted to ask, I'm not really that tech savvy. Maybe someone, software engineers or someone that could speak on behalf of this methodology. But couldn't an API exist or could be used between brokers and AST to consolidate that information? Someone did present the idea of a Plaid API previously.
Yeah, Plaid services to open up for, yeah, you have to opt in on a broker by broker basis, and it requires I've used it a couple of times. Actually, anybody that participated in the shareholder questions proposed for the fiscal year 2021 Meta results, they use Say Technologies, which is owned by Robinhood now, but they utilize Plaid in order to confirm the share counts. And if you're opening it up to any and all of your brokers, and they had all the major players on there, right? That were standard by default, you just log in and it's looking at that moment in time, the number of shares that you have. Now, the interesting piece of that is just from an accounting standpoint, obviously there's all different kinds of placeholder QSIPs, right? So, but we could attribute that pretty quickly. John, I don't know if there's obviously share intel. I don't know if they're going back forensically and looking at the ins and outs from a transaction standpoint, but for current share count, I don't know if that's been explored for viability.
No, I'd love to talk to you more about that, Curtis, offline if you can.
Yep. And we did use it. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I'd also just love to jump in and say that part of what I'm asking for the accounting for is, I know that there's got to be services for it, but for FINRA to actually start the transfer process into the private corporation, they are the ones that are responsible for regulating all brokerages coming together to issue those shares for the private, like the exchange. They begin the exchange process, so they have to be the ones that accept all the accounting from every brokerage, because they're the ones regulating the brokerages. DTCC doesn't regulate the brokerages in the way that FINRA does. So that is the only person who's going to have the regulatory authority over every brokerage, and can therefore actually has access to all of those different brokerages accountings.
Okay,
I
great.
didn't know FINRA loved us.
Oracle, Syntax, or Curtis, if you could please just remove my microphone, and if you could give it to Michael Domino, please. Thank you.
Yes, actually, Michael was the next one to get a mic. So I'll drop you, Edward, and give one to Michael. So hold on.
Thanks,
1 second.
appreciate it.
No problem. While I'm doing that, Brandon, you're up next.
Hey, thanks, Oracles. John, thanks for your time. Just wanted to ask a few more questions about the service that you're hiring to look into all the trading and things of that nature. Is this something that only private companies can do, or I'm just wondering why more companies wouldn't do this to reconcile their trades?
Maybe John went to take a break.
No, I was.
while he-
I'm getting a bunch of phone calls on the other line, so I missed that question. If you could repeat it, I apologize.
Sure, John. I was just. Thanks for your time. First
Sure.
of all, very interesting what you're speaking to about the party that's kind of reconciling the books as to and looking at all the trades from 5 years back. I'm just wondering, is this something that only like private companies can do, or why don't more heavily shorted?
There actually are a lot of
this.
them using their services right now.
Oh, there
are
are
a lot
Okay,
of companies
cool.
using this. Yeah. I would say there's probably a half a dozen to a dozen companies using the services right now, but I haven't run across, and he's given me the names, but there's nowhere near the type of fuckery that went on in those, excuse my language, in those companies that's gone on in our deal. So he told me he can't wait to get started on this because it's going to be probably the most egregious one he's ever seen. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Sure.
All right, thanks, Brandon. Let's go on to B2B. Go ahead, B2B.
Yes, a couple questions. Rosa talked about dilution. Now, every true preferred A share does have a certificate given to it, right? That actually is attached by number. How would dilution actually happen? Like that's the one question I have. And number two, of course, without without crookery, I mean, I guess that's kind of what we're trying to find out what's going on. The other thing is Fidelity has given somebody that I know, I don't have Fidelity, I have TD, have given out two different CUSIP numbers. One that is contra, and the other one seems to be legitimate shares. Do you have any like insight on that can really like pinpoint what's going on? Have you heard of that?
This is John speaking. I've heard people talking about that, but I have, again, on the CUSIP side of it, I don't know what it means. Meaning, if there are two different CUSIPs, what is the end game, and what does it mean at the end of the day? Is it being used for gray market? Is it used for placeholder internally? I don't know.
And then as far as your question about I'm sorry, your first question was regarding the tracking of the trades, kind of.
Yes.
So as far as that goes, that's kind of why we're asking for the accounting. If you're claiming everything is above board, why is there so much discrepancy going on? That indicates that there's something we're not entitled to a necessarily transparent transaction from FINRA under the following circumstances. One, your broker has a fiduciary duty to you. You're in privity of contract. That means you have a direct contract with your broker. When you have that contract with your broker, it's their job to look out for your best financial interest. That's what a fiduciary duty is. They have to look out for your best financial interest, even if it goes against their own financial interests. That's what their job is, right? So your broker is being regulated now by FINRA. They have to give transparency, the broker, to FINRA, and FINRA then doesn't really owe transparency to anybody until their regulation has failed to serve the beneficiaries and they allow the breach of fiduciary duty to go unregulated. So they're supposed to regulate the brokers to make sure that everything is above board, transactions are valid, there's no form of breach of those duties. But now they're not regulating and things have gone haywire, like out of whack. And now what you have to do is that's when we need to ask, hey, provide us the accounting. Maybe under regular circumstances, we're not necessarily entitled to that accounting, but because there's such huge discrepancies in numbers, there's such a lack of clarity, and there is a breach of fiduciary duty going on, and it's becoming apparent because we're getting actual asset trades deleted and no solid private company shares have yet been issued. And now there's so many different CUSIP numbers and so many different forms of almost like obligations or liabilities instead of actual assets or actual ownership. That is when you say, hey, FINRA, your job to regulate them, to enforce their fiduciary duties upon us has failed. and you are responsible because you breached your duty in holding them accountable because you're the one that has the transparency upon them.
Rosa, can I ask just a clarifying question real quick? When you say that the FINRA, I mean, they have the responsibility, but then there's also, I know that FINRA is in charge of the OTC market, and the SEC doesn't necessarily regulate it, but the SEC regulates FINRA. And I know you cannot do a Freedom of Information Act, with FINRA, but could you then do that with the SEC to see if they have ever come into try and regulate anything or any interaction with FINRA in regards to MMTLP?
So I would have to do research before I can get a definite answer, but to my knowledge, you can do a Freedom of Information Act request with SEC. That's available, but FINRA is like an administrative branch of the SEC. They've been delegated certain duties, like the regulation of these OTC markets, right? So that is what FINRA has been delegated, and there's something in administrative law called intelligible principle. So that means we're giving you these items of delegation, and you have to just meet these requirements, and now we've delegated to you, so now we have less responsibility on us, and it helps them to be more functional at their operations, right? So that's kind of the duty. Many hands makes light work, and it means you can do better in what you're doing. So FINRA, because they are a nonprofit private company that's like a pseudo-governmental company because they have administrative tasks, they're not an actual governmental entity, so you can't ask a Freedom of Information Act against them. However, when they've failed their duties and now it's caused an issue upon beneficiaries that brokerages have a duty to, and their regulations come from FINRA, who has ultimately failed, that's kind of where the lawsuit I've initiated comes into play.
And that was the question I was going to ask you, Rosa. At base level foundation, who is right now the main culprit? I mean, we talk about our brokers and whatnot. Who are we looking at to say, we can address our brokers and put heat on them, but who is the actual? I mean, is it truly? It almost sounds like, listen, the SEC should be. However, because FINRA is not a governmental agency, then they seem to be a little bit of a different entity. I mean, if you had to actually put a finger point on it, who is the main culprit here?
I think this also is many hands makes light work, right? Everybody put their hands in the cookie jar and now they've all got chocolate on their fingers, right? So I don't think it's necessarily the SEC, because I have, if you delegate something to FINRA, the SEC has kind of taken their hands out of it and said, FINRA, you've been delegated these tasks. You're supposed to maintain these OTC markets and regulate them and whatever. And that's kind of their duty. So imagine that the SEC has not really been actively involved in this process because they've delegated those tasks to what seems like a board of highly knowledgeable and successful people in the market that have an interest in maintaining a functional system of a market. They have an interest in maintaining the market and not allowing it to fail or flounder, because they all have significant interest in it. It's their careers, correct? So, I mean, we all know this. So their interest is in maintaining the market in the status quo. So you're obviously not supposed to blow it up by allowing it to get so completely crazy as it has in this instance. But the brokerages have gotten greedy and hungry. The banks have the liability for the hedge funds, who have just clearly brokerages and market makers have taken the shares and taken the positions and all the calls and puts, and we don't even know how far this really goes because there's a lack of transparency, because you're giving your shares, you're giving your funds as you're creating a trustee relationship with the brokerage. You're giving them the money and you're saying, okay, you're the trustee to go and make me some money with this investment. I'm investing in this. You're actually holding the shares on my behalf. There's a fiduciary duty here. And any of the behind the scene things, like when you sign up for contracts of calls and puts, you enter into contracts, but ultimately you're a beneficiary, they're a trustee. And it creates a fiduciary duty where they have a duty to maintain. They don't necessarily owe you transparency right away, but they have to kind of maintain the functions. And then FINRA is supposed to regulate them. So FINRA should have been regulating them, and FINRA also should have instead of stopping the bleeding on the hedge funds, market makers, brokerages, they should have forced them to close out positions and reconcile all of the mayhem that has happened. So yes, we can say it's brokerages, hedge funds, market makers, whomever caused this discrepancy in shares, but it's also now they did that, they made the mess, but regulatory agency that was supposed to force them to uphold their duties to beneficiaries has reinforced these bad acts.
So what you're saying is everybody's guilty by association.
Pretty much. It's everybody's got some dirt on their hands.
Awesome. Thank you, B2B. Let's go on over to Jonah.
Hi there. I just want to say I appreciate you guys so much, and I think everybody in this community has really rallied together to like really make it fair again. Rosa had mentioned something, and obviously, our original Torch shares, and our placeholders had a value to them, and now they're giving us a piece of paper. But one thing that a lot of people have forgotten, they've actually emptied out our accounts and taken our money now with respect to these shares. What's going on with that? I mean, nobody's mentioned it. They want to give us just a placeholder, and Fidelity basically, all they did was take one QSIP number that was given as a placeholder for metamaterials and for these preferred shares, and basically created their own QSIP number, which they said in writing to me, which will be tied to Nextbridge just for Fidelity. So, but what happens to our money? Because they've basically cleared out our accounts, and nobody's mentioned that at all.
That's a real good point. I was wondering if John wants to chime in on that, because I mean, I'm an OG. A lot of mine are OGs, so again, it was the value is different than ones that actually bought it cash.
And if I understand infinite risk on both ends, but they didn't allow us to trade. They shut us down, and zeroed our accounts out, and are holding our money hostage, liquidating people's accounts if there's any kind of fees or margin, and still holding our money hostage.
So what I will say is any funds that you had as far as MMTLP was tied to that ticker. So the reason they cleared out your accounts is upon the deletion, any funds or value tied to that ticker were going to be deleted. That's kind of piece and parcel as to saying these assets which I purchased assets. So when you had Torch, part of the agreement for the merger was that you were going to receive assets which you owned as a shareholder, and your buy-in was your buy-in to Torch. And if you bought into MMTLP, your purchase of the assets was buying MMTLP shares. So anything associated or tied to that ticker was deleted upon the deletion, because that was your buy-in price to purchase the assets, which have been taken away and replaced by placeholders instead of replaced by a company or a corporation. That was the agreement, is I will get private shares in a company. I will get value for value, assets for company. Instead, they gave you, they took away any value, which is your assets and their buy-in price or value as it's demonstrated in your account. And they gave you empty share placeholders, which are not a corporation, are not an asset. They don't hold anything. I can't go and say I'm part owner of MMTZZZZZ company, because it doesn't exist. So they've taken value and they've given you no consideration for it. That's the issue.
Okay, thank you.
And the other aspect I would say on that, you mentioned that there's infinite risk on both sides. That's not true. You know what your risk is. If you pay $1 or $1.50, it can go to zero and you lose $1.50. If someone shorts that stock, they are acutely aware that stock could go to 100, and that's their risk. So that's why the short game is risky. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Excellent. Thanks, John. It's going to be Marduk, then Michael, then Gray. Marduk, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't have my Marducks in a row. Can you go to the next speaker? I'll jump in after.
Okay. Michael, you got the floor.
Sure. Well, first, I just wanted to say it felt good to hear someone talking about the vote suggestion. I think Marduk encouraged me to put that out there a couple of weeks ago, so it's kind of cool that that's a serious consideration. But that's not what I was going to say. I was curious, and this is a question for John. What exactly would hamstring the Nextbridge from moving forward? Would it be litigation? Say the thing went to litigation for 6 months to a year. Does that mean Nextbridge couldn't be purchased by an oil company that couldn't move forward with anything, or does it just muddy the waters? And that's my question.
No, I think Nextbridge is moving forward, as you know, in the oil and gas business. That is their primary focus, and that's what they're doing.
But
okay. all of this other stuff that's going on in the background is kind of being handled by the board of directors. I'm talking to them and assisting them wherever I can. But their focus is oil and gas, and they're out there drilling right now. So, and I think Clifton told me last week that they're planning on having a video call sometime the first part of January to kind of introduce the team and what they're planning and what they have on the outlook for 2023. So be on the lookout for that. They'll communicate that with that on Twitter, as well as they'll probably press release it. And if you registered on their page, they will send you an email on that as well.
Okay.
I just like to piggyback off of that and say that the litigation is not against Nextbridge itself. So if when there's a company that has litigation against them, it can cause an interference with any future trades, going public, an IPO, all those kinds of things can be derailed or deterred, because who wants to get involved with a company that has potential loss or liability coming at it? We're trying to confirm there's no dilution in the shares and to confirm the integrity of the company, and by suing other parties. So it's really not going to have any bearings on them.
Agreed. Great point.
And just as a follow-up to that, so in the event the research that's done next week does yield information that then would need to be researched even further through discovery, are you saying that none of those actions would harm any potential future for Nextbridge, that would be separate and it wouldn't matter?
Yeah, that would be separate. And I will tell you this, back when I was at Torchlight and in control of things, we actually segregated the assets into separate holding companies or separate LLCs that are wholly owned. And the reason being is that if let's just say, for example, that we knew there was an end to this mess, and that the shorts had to cover, and the only way that they could cover is by coming to Nextbridge, then Nextbridge, the parent company, could certainly sell them shares at whatever negotiated price it is. And let's just say someone came along and bought the Oro Grande prior to that. That's two different events. So one, they could buy the Oro Grande, which is held in Hudspeth Oil Corporation, and they could buy that for cash and then turn around, 3 months later and finally cover the short position. So all of those things, they're segregated for a reason. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can I make an executive decision right now? Is that okay?
Sure.
I just know that Right Brain Trader said that he has to go and he only has a couple of minutes, and I've been trying to get him on. Would you guys be okay if I put him on real quick?
Please do.
Thank you. Okay, I want to hear it. Say it, Right Brain.
Glorious bastards.
I love it.
Listen, I'm not really into that. I'm not really into the shorts covering through Nextbridge. That doesn't really, I don't see how that benefits me.
I'm not suggesting that's the path forward. If you've heard me talk in the past, my number one priority is to have each and every shareholder have their day in the sun.
Yeah, I want the letter of law to be followed. Let's not be naive. The SEC facilitates FINRA, e.g. facilitates corruption. It's a stock market mafia. They're all equally guilty. Unfortunately, our brokers have been bailed out by FINRA and this stock market mafia. And after reaching out to AST, as many of us have, has become definitively clear that my Nextbridge hydrocarbon shares have not been transferred. Not that the number in TD Ameritrade 5CT99 blah blah blah. So in understanding how the share lending program works, since the implementation of the stock lending program at and through the DTC obviously has a set number of legitimate shares for any given stock. In the case of MMTLP, that was 165 million. And when the record date was given, the date that the position must be closed, everything was supposed to stop, and they were supposed to count our shares. Each brokerage is allotted and therefore holds a definitive number of shares at the DTC. However, when it came time to close MMTLP, there's obviously a discrepancy, not if, there is a discrepancy. And the reason TD Ameritrade and other brokerages have not sent our shares to ASAT is because ASAT does not allow counterfeit shares. Does not allow counterfeit shares. That's emphatically true, which renders the placeholder beside my name a made-up number that holds zero tenure. The million-dollar question here is, when are you going to cover the copious amount of naked/counterfeit shares that they've created? When are they going to cover them? They're effectively ripping me off, and I'm not happy about it. So on the other hand, I'm hearing this rhetoric about the squeaky wheel somehow is going to reveal the counterfeit share count. It's not up to me. It's not up to anybody in this community as a shareholder to reveal the corruption and push the hand of these brokerages and everybody who's created counterfeit shares to cover their positions. And on the other hand, I hear there's a team unveiling the share count, Share Intel or whoever. This class action lawsuit crap that I'm hearing, I personally haven't the slightest desire to wait years to find out how many counterfeit shares there are. Those counterfeit shares need to be covered. Who do you have pushing for them to cover them? Because covering those counterfeit shares are the only way to bring any legitimacy to our position. We both know that the DTC is essentially the mothership in this monopolistic mafia, and they'll be protected at all costs. And my phone call to the DTC and explaining to them what they already know, which is brokerages are the place where shorts go to die, that brokerages are exploiting the DTC share lending program with their little F3 button. And if you hear my video with the guy, I got back to the trading desk today, and he snickered about it. Of course, he's not going to admit anything to me, but that's how they do it. They create these shares, lending out exponentially more shares than the DTC holds in the lots in the DTC system. In essence, I want to see the ship sink. I want to see brokerages liquefied. This is sickening. This is done. We need to get these people to cover these shares. I'm not going into Nextbridge without them covering these shares. I'm sick of kicking the can down the road. What's going on? I'm done. Ran over.
All right, Brian.
I appreciate you passion, and I think you speak to the sentiment of what we are all feeling. And it sucks because we're in a waiting game right now because we don't have the challenge.
Hey,
Can you hear me?
Up a lot.
Yeah.
Oh shoot, we're having a really big storm. Can you hear me now?
This is better. Yeah.
Yes, much better, Sam.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, I think that we all agree and can relate to the passion that you very eloquently express. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate and like about you, especially with your video the other day when you had your phone call. That was a very emotional phone call. I was tearing up. The hard part, and I think John can probably speak to this, and I know you were speaking to John, and so I'm sorry for interjecting, but I feel like we're in this position, and it's.
I was speaking to the community. I mean, I suppose some of it was directed towards John as far as answers go. This is just making me sick to my stomach that this is not a free and fair market. They, I have to cover my short positions. Why don't they? And what's going on? Sorry.
Well, and that's exactly it. I mean, this is moved beyond so much more than just me making some money, right? This is a battle. This is a financial revolution. This is about making change and making things right that are so wrong. And the sucky part is because we all want to just be in action mode and do something, and we want to be proactive instead of reactive. And it feels like we have to wait for the next move, the hedge fund's next move. What's the criminal's next move? And then we just have to react to it. And so I think what John was saying about this accounting, and what Rosa's saying about her lawsuit, we need a weapon. And right now we are trying to gather our weapons, and because we don't have weapons, and we need weapons to fight these guys because they're so evil. And our weapons are data, and that's what we're trying to get.
Lawyers, guns, and money.
Huh?
Lawyers, guns, and money.
Yes. We need our proverbial guns, right? And Rosa's going to give us our guns, hopefully. We don't know what's going to happen if that's not coming to fruition, because we have gotten, every time we have an idea and we're like, oh, we're gonna go this route, right? They try and stop us, but do we stop? Do we give up? No, we don't. And John Brda's got this company right now who's trying to get the accounting. Like, we are doing everything we can. And then we also know that when they give the shares from, AST and the brokerage, that there's going to possibly be discrepancies. I want to know what the discrepancies are. I want to have numbers. If we don't get full numbers, great. If we know, if they say, yes, there's counterfeits, that's a weapon right there. So we need weapons.
I'll just add that I keep seeing a lot of tweets saying, well, if I was FINRA's attorney, I would just say I'm protecting retail. That's why I issued the halt and whatever. That's great. Kudos for them. Pats on the back, snaps, whatever. Good for you. That does not negate providing an accounting. Like, how does that justify you don't provide an accounting? Because why should I take your word for it? That's the way the law operates. You provide an accounting. You provide the facts, documents, discovery. And that's kind of why, like, people ask a lot of questions, which is great. Keep asking good questions. But a lot of it is, well, what if they just say they did it for this? Or what if they just say that? Well, or what if they say it's too late now? Or what if, whatever. None of those things. Okay, that's great. Provide an accounting. Like, that's it. Provide an accounting. You want to get out of it? Provide an accounting.
Well, I think that's the main thing that everybody's actually screaming, and John has been saying this from jump ship, that there has been no accountability from day one, and now we are screaming there's no accountability and there needs to be some. It's really that simple.
All of this can end. This entire lawsuit can end. Provide an accounting. If you're all in the good and you guys haven't done anything wrong and you want to say that this is malicious, whatever, frivolous litigation, that's fine. Provide an accounting and it's over. One piece of paper, and that's the end of the whole thing. If you won't provide that, if you won't do something so simple as providing an accounting, which brokerages were obligated to provide to them by now, by the way. If you won't provide the accounting, why not? So answer me that. You can end the whole lawsuit by providing one piece of paper, and you're choosing not to. Why? If everything's above board, then why not? Just tell me.
To be fair, Rosa, I don't know if that amount of paper exists in the world to account for the actual accounting. A single piece of paper is probably not doing it.
But whose fault is that now? And why should retail pay? Hedge fund brokers, also these brokers, these hedge funds, these market makers, all the people and the players who are making money on this make their companies billions of dollars a year. Retail investors are just eating it on this, and that's not fair. And that's not right, because they have a duty to us. We don't have a duty to them.
Well, they have to decide if, like, when you say the proverbial, all they have to do is give a piece of paper. I agree. What they have to decide to do is either we're going to lie again and deepen this hole, or come clean. I mean, that's it. And I think that's where they're at.
I agree, but I also think that it's an issue of you lie and deepen the hole and you face prosecution, right? You face perjury.
That's a foregone conclusion, even if they were to come clean right now. In my mind, they're like, hey, we're we're already going to have problems. So we might as well deny until we can't deny anymore. And that's what we're trying to actually get them to that position where they just can't deny anymore. They're not capable of doing it anymore.
I'd say good luck finding an attorney that will allow you to file evidence that's just is untrue or incorrect. Because if I had a client come to me and wanted me to sign an affidavit and file with my bar license number, something that was a lie, I would definitely not take that client. And I think they're going to have to disclose to their attorney. I think it's going to cause it. I don't even know what to anticipate in this whole thing, just because what a mess this has been and so unprecedented is every next step leads us to an entirely new terrain. And I just think that it's very interesting. And if they don't file an answer to the complaint in just a few days, in about almost 2 weeks, if they don't file an answer, then they automatically default. So.
Ooh, what does default mean?
That means they lose by failure to answer. So then I file with the clerk for a clerk's default, and then I send it to the judge, and he gives an order against them regardless.
Yay! I would love that.
Yeah, so would I. But let's see if they answer. They have about almost 2 weeks.
That would be some good stuff there. All right,
John. What do you think? What do you think about what Rosa just said?
No, I'm a big supporter of what she's doing, and I don't believe there's any ironclad answer to this. Whatever we need to do to get information is what we need to be focusing on. We all want the same thing. We all want our day in the sun, and we all want justice for what they've been doing, not only to us but for everybody else. But Rose is correct. Until we have accounting of one share out of whack, that's all we need is one share. Then we know that, I think I tweeted about this on Friday the 9th. I was up early and I was just kind of, reflecting on the day before. And I said, you know what, we're going to find out today, because if one share trades, we know that the books are in balance. And sure shit, they halted it. So, so that was the end of my, my glorious tweet. That was pretty short lived. So anyway.
I think it also goes to show that we all own Nextbridge, right? Allegedly, supposedly, when the books shake out, whatever. We all own Nextbridge. So we all have a right to ensure the integrity of Nextbridge. They're the ones instituting this exchange. They're the ones facilitating this exchange. And they have a fiduciary duty to us that they have not diluted our ownership shares, because that's a big deal. If you are ever engaged in litigation against a corporation, it's something called shareholders lawsuits. Shareholders lawsuits are usually against the board of directors when they dilute shares without permission by incurring new debts, different kinds of methods of diluting shares, whatever. And it's taken as a huge deal. So when a third party that does not have ownership over the company, or somebody like a broker who has a fiduciary duty as a trustee to the beneficiary, has enabled and facilitated the dilution of shares, this should be a really big deal.
Excellent. All right, I'm just gonna make a little executive decision as well. Ollie, you have your hand up. Ollie?
Well, wait, real quick, Ollie, definitely, anytime he wants to speak, because like I said, he is the reason that we're here, and he talked to John and got him here. So Ollie, thank you, everybody. Thank Ollie, you did it.
Yeah, thank you. And I also like to thank, special thanks to John Brda from myself and everybody here for coming, because I think one thing we need to remember is we're all on the same team. We're not on the opposing team. We are all together. So the last thing we need to do is have any disagreements with ourselves. If anybody does wish to disagree, then that's fine. There are disagreements in everyone, but let me clarify my position. So first of all, I think what we need to do is we need to look at the short term, the medium term, and the long term. So Right now, let's have a look at the short term. So in the short term, we've done actions such as change.org, we've complained to FINRA, we've complained to brokers, we have people approaching senators and Congress. We are also complaining to the SEC. We have Rosa's excellent shareholder litigation, which is for a claim for equitable relief for the violation of the Sherman Act. I think that is to do with restriction of trade. We've also approached media outlets, so special thanks to John for that, even though I think it was only a 4-minute interview. We have requests from journalists. I've just passed on a message just earlier today to John for somebody who would like to speak to him. Apparently he may be able to have some useful insights. So this is something that I see that is happening right now in the short term and right now. So what I am looking at now is what are our plans going forward? What are our plans going in the future? We are not a single person here is on the side of the hedge funds, is on the side of the shorts. We are not defending them. We are against them. We want our 2 days trading back. We want them to cover. We want them to close. We want our day in the sun. Exactly as John said, we are all on the same team. So let's have a look at what we are going to do next. The plan next, the way I see it, is we need to have something. If this was a war, we're using rifles, we're using hand grenades, we're using rocket launchers, cruise missiles. But if none of this works, this wall of silence does not break down, then there is power in numbers, and the power in numbers is the class action. So the class action is something. It is not. First of all, you must not think that is on compulsory on everybody. So if you do not want to be part of any class action, that is completely and entirely up to you. No problem whatsoever. But if you want to be part of a class action, as far as I'm concerned, this option needs to remain open. It's not an option I want. It's not an option right now, and it's not an option that we are looking at in the short term. But long term, 100% I'm in favor of it, and the reason why is because A, there is power in numbers. B, it's reduction of cost. We pool together. We share our cost. That reduces the legal fees. That I believe there are also options of lawyers who will take a cut. That is a downside. I accept that is something that is not positive from that. I'm not, first of all, going to say that we are going to get 100% of our money back. I know that's not the case. So we have to be realistic. But this is something I believe we're going to use as a last resort. And the reason why we're going to use it is because if all else fails, we don't give up. So you've got 2 options. So you've got one person who says, right, we've tried everything, but I don't believe in a class action, so I'm not doing it. Well, when everything fails and there's no other option, that's the one I think we will use. But so that's our long-term goal. Short-term, we're all on the same side, but we need to prepare for all outcomes. So. And really, we have a very, very strong case. We have a strong case. Class actions. The other benefit, I think, of a class action is just the actual threat of a class action is enough for them to take note, is enough for them to respond, is enough for them to say, hold on, we are going to negotiate. So it's just like, let me use the analogy of a war. If you say, right, our finger is on the trigger, and they say, okay, we're negotiating. At the moment, complaining to FINRA, complaining to brokers, complaining to the SEC, where is it getting us? We're scratching our heads. So we continue the battle, we continue the fight, but let's look to the long term as well. So, but remember, we must not fight between ourselves. We must be united, and a class action is an entirely voluntary thing. It should not be divisive. You have the choice to do it. You have the choice not to do it. Let's respect each other's wishes.
And I think you bring up a good point. If we let them know, and them, you know who I'm talking about, what we are and are not willing to do, if we take options off the table, then they pivot, right? So if we have every option, every weapon that we can gather on the table, and we are saying we are willing to use them, we are willing to push the red button, then maybe they're not able to pivot and try and adjust to what we are willing to do, but then they're like, oh shit, we have to cover all of our bases.
So I'll say never count out a class action. I don't think we're there yet, to be honest, because we haven't ascertained losses or damages. But we don't know how this is going. Every step changes, and we can't count out a class action. That should be something that we know if we get there, we'll get there. And that's an option. It's not an option right now, but like Ali said, it's a long-term option, and it's something that we have to consider. Like, if we get to that point, it's a tool in our arsenal. Right now, we're not there. A lot of people want to file right now. We don't really have the option to file that right now because we haven't ascertained those losses, the damages, to determine. When you file a class action, you have to say, I have this and this and this loss. Well, we don't know how much dilution has happened. We don't know the values of shares. We don't know the amount of illegal trading or naked shorting. We don't have anything to determine that until we get something definitive, whether that's from AST, whether that's from Nextbridge, whether that's from the current litigation with FINRA, whether that's from a future litigations against brokerages. We don't know yet, but it's something that we cannot count out. And if it comes down to it, it may be the only thing to push it all the way. So if you're willing to say, no, I won't take a class action. Well, what if it gets to the point where that's the only form of even just punitive impact that you can have against them? What if that's the only thing it does, is it punishes them? Well, that's something I'd still like to do. So if that's what it brings us to, I mean, don't cross it out. You don't know yet.
Yeah, 100% agree, Rosa. That was exactly my point. And I think we should not rule anything out, because at the end of the day, we are up against the very, very powerful organizations. We are the retail, and they are the ones holding the power. So we need to use every single avenue available to us.
Agree tremendously. All right, we'll go to Marduk and then Gray. Go ahead. And guys, please also remember, I have 26 requests right now. I don't have any mics available, and I'm trying to move it along so that way I can get everyone to speak. So go ahead, Marduk.
Hey, thanks, guys. There's a lot of things I'd like to say, but obviously we're on a time crunch, so I'm going to keep it nice and sweet, short and sweet. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I appreciate everybody's time. I love you all to death. Everybody knows this. First thing I wanted to bring up was the class action thread. I think a lot of people just didn't read the whole thread or actually look into what Ali said. I think they just looked at it, jumped to conclusions, looked up what a class action was, and realized that it might not be a good idea. If you read the whole thing, John specifically says, I was spitballing, and this is a something we can look at later when we're all made whole, right? So that out of the way, I did want to ask Rosa about a derivative action lawsuit, if that was another avenue. And then before that, I wanted to say that I hate the term meme stock. These people class these companies into a list of joke companies, which is unfair. These are legitimate companies with hardworking people who have families, and I'm just tired of being categorized like that. I did upload a bunch of stuff to the top of the nest, but it looks like somebody started deleting all of it. But later on, I'll have a space and I'll reshare stuff. I just wanted to just share some links with people to kind of create more awareness in the community, help recruit, help educate, help get people informed of their rights, the rules that these people have to follow and should be following. And it's just about, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. So thanks so much. Appreciate it. And Rosa, if you could touch on derivative action, that'd be great. Thanks.
What did you say, Sen?
I was trying to ask if his space was going to start right after to be kind to direct people, but I don't know. Okay, it is. Okay, John Brda has said he only has about 10 minutes. I would like to use his time the most expeditious way we can. I know that Gray has a question. Gray is very articulate. Curtis has a question. Let's try and do them quickly. He's got to go.
Okay, thank you. I'll be very quick. I just want to make a quick point on Jonna's chat earlier. That if you're in a brokerage where your position went to zero, the respective short position also went very, very green for that particular short that with that brokerage. Okay, just wanted to make a point on that. John, thank you. Very easy questions here for you. The first one is if Greg McCabe, when he's received his shares for Hudspeth, which was merged with Nextbridge Hydrocarbons, would they have gone to AST, or would they be and obviously not be able to take part in a grey market, or would they be elsewhere in another brokerage account? John.
Maybe he can't hear you. John, can you hear Gray? Did you hear his question?
Oh no, did we lose him?
Oh,
have we lost John?
We just lost him.
Oh no.
So that may have been the 10 minutes. Maybe he said that earlier. He had to go. Dang it.
Okay. All right. Damn it. I wanted to answer that question. That's a shame. Okay. Well, I'll save my other questions for next time because there are really any questions I think that John could probably answer.
Can you do me a favor? Can you? Yes, you can. Damn it! I need you to text or to tweet your question, and then tag him on it, and then I'll just also message him, and then we can get it so that because when we hear a question, we're like, oh, that's a good question. I want to know the answer. So if you could do that, because now we all want to know.
Okay. Well, I'll say the other question anyway. The other question was, who would be approaching Nextbridge Hydrocarbons to purchase shares? Would it be the broker? Would it be the short themselves? Or would it be a market maker? Who would be actually looking to do that? There's a couple of questions I had for John. The other question I had for him was what was his favorite color? But you guys never seem to ask that question to anybody. So,
What's your favorite color? Gray?
Yeah, red. It's red. Not even gray. It's red.
Your favorite color's not gray. I'm judging.
All right, I'll drop my mind. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I'll text I'll tweet the questions. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Gray.
Thanks, Gray.
I'll jump back on that derivative action question. Who asked that question? Sorry.
It was Marduk.
Marduk.
Okay, sorry. I'm like the worst with names sometimes, especially because I'm getting ready to finish up something at work. But I will jump on and say, technically what I'm doing is a bit of a derivative action lawsuit, but the issue is this is an initiate. So I'm a shareholder filing against a third party. A derivative action lawsuit is when you are doing a lawsuit on behalf of a corporation for something that's been wronged to the corporation. Typically, it's seeking damages, but I'm seeking equitable relief. So that's one variation. But then a second variation is still that the board of directors didn't have, they didn't. So typically when you do a derivative action lawsuit, you can do it twofold. One, sue the board of directors for not doing anything and ask them to make you whole again for any legal losses that you lost. Filing fees, attorney's fees, et cetera, et cetera. Second is the actual claim, which you're going against a third party for. Nextbridge hasn't done anything. The board of directors hasn't done anything. They are just sitting, waiting for FINRA to institute an exchange, which has been agreed upon. Numbers have been agreed. Expectations have been set. They haven't really done anything. And I know a lot of people are getting antsy and want to sue various corporations in this process, but they haven't done anything. They're sitting waiting for this exchange process to take hold and for them to have a receipt of their expectations, which we all have the same expectations based on the information that's been put before us throughout this process. And those expectations were cut short as soon as this halt was initiated and prevented reconciliation, which we all knew was headed over because of all the short positions that have carried over, all the options and calls that have been carried over, and all that from torch days. So that's one thing. And then I am filing a claim on behalf of the company, and which I'm a shareholder, but I'm also, it's not necessarily a derivative action because I'm not a representative of the company. I'm not claiming that I'm claiming for my individual shares not to be diluted, and also for an equitable action to enjoin a company from acting as a monopoly and restricting trade and acting. So when you're a monopoly, you have an individual financial you have interest, so you have your own financial interest. So like each broker has their own financial interest of what their gain is, but you all act together to further each of your own individual financial interests against consumers. So that's kind of what has happened to us, but we're beneficiaries and consumers because it was a publicly traded stock until the time of the halt and the deletion. So I am kind of filing a derivative action. That is another step we could take, but we'd have to assess damages, I think, before we could take a final step in that action. But I also think that the corporation itself would probably file something which we could all be a part of, or we could, as shareholders, kind of band together and decide to file that derivative action. Typically, those aren't for equitable relief. Those are more for, you only need one equitable relief order from one of us. So if I get this one, we all benefit. If we want damages, we need to file it and then say for the represented shareholders. But now how do we ascertain who's a shareholder when there's dilution, discrepancy, nobody's actually holding shares? So that is where the whole issue comes into play, where it's like, well, now we still need an accounting.